Hi,
Uh,
Frank.
I just want to say welcome to everybody. I'm so delighted to be with you for this third seminar. And very, very delighted to be with my dear friend Roshi. Um, it's been a great gift to us to work together on this and to share this with all of you. Um, I want to say something at the very beginning here about both the Metta Institute and Upaya. We're doing this as best we can, but both organizations have been dramatically affected by the pandemic. And honestly, we could really use your help and support. Upaya Zen Center is an incredible gift to the world. Roshi has done a brilliant job of bringing Zen practice into the world in a particularly unique way, a way that really empowers women. But in addition to that practice, there's the kind of service that Upaya provides to the world is just extraordinary. Whether it's nomad clinics that bring medical help into the Himalayas, or their prison projects, or their being with dying training, it is a phenomenon in our world right now, the Upaya Institute, and it really can use your support. The Metta Institute has a wonderful end-of-life training program with remarkable faculty, Norman Fisher, and great teachers like Ram Dass, who just died this last year. And so we're doing our very best to provide a unique approach to mindful and compassionate care to the dying. So again, I want to just say in this moment that your help to support these two struggling organizations would be greatly appreciated. Your generosity is a way that you can express your appreciation of these three seminars that we've been trying to offer on a Dana basis. So you'll find a link at the Upaya on this. You'll find a link to make a donation through the Upaya Institute, and we would ask you to please be as generous as possible. And I might come back to this later on in the end of the session. But for now, what I want to talk about is a practice. Yeah. So I'd like in the beginning just to guide us in a short meditation practice. I think that our mindfulness and our compassion are the most useful, the least expensive tools that we can use in literally every aspect of our personal life and our work. But unfortunately, they're often undervalued and sadly sometimes even viewed as inappropriate. And so they're shelved for some other time. And as a result, a lot of us live and work in a great deal of distress and fear. And I think we can do something about that. So this morning, I just wanted to offer us a very short practice. So please come into your breath and body as best you can. Settling in, feeling the breath deeply in the body. You can notice perhaps the way the diaphragm expands and contracts when your belly empties and fills. Feeling your feet firmly on the floor, your legs relaxed, shoulders soft. And just check the body, the heart, and the mind, releasing any unnecessary tension that might be there. And then let's just pause. Pause is a choice not to be swept away by the momentum of habit. The pause is remembering who you actually are and what you've come here to do. Pause is an opportunity to collect your mind and heart and body into this moment. So let's pause. And then relax. Mindfulness emerges much more easily in a relaxed mind, in a relaxed heart and body. So again, see if you can release any unnecessary tension. And see how little effort's required. No extra effort is needed. So pause and relax. And then open. For this little bit of time, can we be really open-minded? Liberating ourselves from our views and beliefs about who we are and what we think is possible in this moment. Characteristic of an open mind is kind of spaciousness infused with curiosity. So pause, relax, and open. And now allow. Allowing takes us beyond accepting and rejecting altogether. It's a kind of trusting in what's emerging. It reminds us to release ourselves from the whole idea of comparison, of preference, of for and against. It's a resting place. Rest in allowing. So again and again, pause and relax. Open and allow. And then become intimate. It's a kind of communion with our experience, an immediacy with our experience. Nothing between awareness and the object. Just a loving, fearless receptivity. Again and again, pause, relax, open, allow, become intimate. Thank you very much for your practice and your sincerity.
Thank you, Frank. So I want to thank all of you for joining Frank and me today, and also Silvia and Gustavo, Jean, Fabio. It's really amazing to be able to reach through to all of you all over the world who are part of this seminar, and also to have the capacity to actually be in translation into Spanish and Portuguese. So yay team. And I hope that the connection that we have, that is our big Mahasangha, online Sangha, and as well with Nirakara and Fabio's Brazilian network will continue. And Frank, my dear, You're fiddling with technology.
I am, unfortunately. Yes.
Yeah, well, don't worry about it. We're all, this is a new thing. Talking and teaching on Zoom is very weird because usually the text is before me. I know Frank is the same. You know, you're sort of face to face and warm hand to warm hand with people. So thanks for bearing with us as we learn how to do this, because I definitely feel like a rank beginner. So when Frank and I were talking about what we wanted to do in our seminars together for this program, we wanted the third seminar to be on hope, wise hope. You know, particularly because we're in this very odd and also scary situation. And we wrote, we will explore how hope is a basic human need and can be an optimizing force that includes buoyancy, resourcefulness, courage, and imagination. You cannot have hope without having imagination. To be helpful, hope requires both a clear intention and simultaneously a letting go. So about 2 years ago, a little less than 2 years ago, I was invited to...
Eu fui convidada para dar uma palestra no monastério em Japão.
One of two big...
En uno de los dos, digamos, monasterios de formación, y me dijeron que hablara de esperanza, sobre la esperanza, y yo dije, ¿de verdad?
Japanese Buddhist institution wants me to talk about hope. Okay. But to be perfectly frank, hope has always bothered me. It just didn't seem very Buddhist to hope. And I think for many of us today, if we look out on the landscape of what is emerging in our individual lives, but also globally, it seems pretty futile to hope, because we are, all of us, in the midst of a global pandemic where over 400,000 people have been diagnosed, over 250,000 people have died, and we're watching world economies crash, airlines, their whole structures, the planes aren't crashing, but the airlines are crashing. We are also seeing that the medical system in many countries, these systems are facing unprecedented challenges. And I know from my students that clinicians, whether they're nurses or doctors or chaplains, are facing moral dilemmas that are completely heartbreaking. And in the middle of all of this, we're facing a climate catastrophe, and we're also in the middle of the sixth extinction. So this is a pretty strange time to be hopeful in the conventional sense of what we mean by hope. And I remember once I heard Suzuki Roshi say that life is like stepping onto a boat which is about to sail out to sea and sink. Whoa, that was a very interesting way to look at life, but in a way very true. Yes, we all in a way seem to be sinking. And also this sinking feeling is coloring how we see the world. Frankly, I couldn't utter the word hope without feeling like a fraud. It just seemed like a kind of a trespass of reality. But for some reason, last year, I became hopeful. And I wanted to look more deeply at what hope meant. And in part, that was prompted by the request from Sojoji Monastery but also was prompted by some kind of psychic shift, some sort of shift inside of my own heart and mind. And it also colored my world. And I began this exploration to look at what hope is not. And clearly, from my point of view, hope is not something that says everything is going to turn out okay. People die. Many people are dying now. Populations die out. Civilizations die. Planets die. Look at Mars. Stars die. Just thinking about the words of Suzuki Roshi again, yeah, the boat is going to sink. And if we look, and look honestly and deeply, we see the evidence of suffering, of injustice, of futility, of desolation, of harm all around us. And also for many, and even for me at times, within us. I mean, what we're going through today, individually and globally in relation to the virus, is a strong case in point. Who knew? Certainly not most of us. So hope is clearly not based on optimism. It's not based on the assumption that everything's going to be okay. For example, optimists imagine that things will turn out positively. And I've come to consider this point of view pretty dangerous because if you're an optimist, it means really you don't have to bother. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to act. Also, if things don't turn out well, what follows for many is cynicism and futility. And of course, hope is the opposite of the narrative that everything's going to get worse, or the position that pessimists take. And pessimists take refuge, basically, in depressive apathy, or apathy that's fundamentally driven by cynicism. Now, it's clear, neither pessimists or optimists have to do anything. They're basically excused from engagement. So we can ask, what is it to be hopeful and not optimistic? So I found this beautiful perspective articulated by the novelist Barbara Kingsolver, and I want to just share her words. And she said, I've been thinking a lot lately about the difference between being optimistic and being hopeful. And I would say that I'm a hopeful person, although not necessarily optimistic. And now here's how I would describe it, she says. The pessimist would say, it's going to be a terrible winter, we're all going to die. The optimist would say, oh, it'll be all right. I don't think it'll be that bad. But the hopeful person would say, maybe someone will still be alive in February, so I'm going to put some potatoes in the root cellar just in case. I'm going to put some potatoes in the root cellar just in case. And then Kingsolver says, hope is a mode of resistance, a gift I can try to cultivate. So if we look at hope through the lens of Buddhism, we discover that wise hope, which I'm saying conventional hope, you have an outcome that you want to see happen. But wise hope is based on the experience of radical uncertainty. It's rooted in the unknown and in the unknowable. And we are certainly in the grip, in the vice of a time that is radically uncertain. And yet, I think it's important to look and ask ourselves, how can we ever really know what is going to happen in the next moment? We can't. I live down the hill from the Santa Fe Institute, which is an institute dedicated to the study of complexity and complex adaptive systems. And they are, the people up there are remarkable. They're all people involved in AI and in modeling. So, experts are modeling the future, but they're not necessarily making the future. And in fact, these models can lead us astray. Potatoes in the cellar is where it's at, I think. Being wisely hopeful. Hope is also a kind of manifestation of wisdom and of clarity, our capacity to see deeply in the world and to see in a way that allows us to care and to be caring, to care in such a way that it's not just in our minds, but to act caring, to feel concern, and then to respond out of concern and care. So the kind of hope that Frank and I are touching into today is a hope that is a manifestation of caring and also of wisdom. And it's also a resistance to futility, which I know many people feel today. And it's also resistance to sappy positivity. So I just want to take a pause right here. There's much more I want to say, but what I'd like to do is for us to actually open the floor for questions and perspectives so that we can have more time to interact with each other. And then maybe I'll return to this exploration of hope with all of you in terms of the specific content that I've been thinking about so deeply over the past couple of years. But what I'd appreciate, Noah and our team, if you would ask some people who have raised their hands, if we could bring them forward, or who have asked questions, that would be super.
Okay.
Can I ask a question that Loretta asked?
Yeah.
So it says, Loretta asked, how do I support someone who's lost a job and may not get work for a long time?
Yeah.
So that's, I think this is a really powerful question, and thank you. And I'm gonna, Frank, since I've been rapping for a little bit, why don't you reflect for a few moments on that? And we're going to be concise in our responses. So, Frank, go for it.
You know, I mean, I loved what you said about wise hope, Roshi, but in response to this, I just can say that one of the things I think we have to do with hope is separate it from expectation. You know, the expectation that things will turn out the way we want them to turn out. And I think actually this opens us to something else, which is surprise. You know, being surprised by what might emerge in our lives. Right now, the best you can do with your friend who may have lost their job is to do what Roshi and I speak about, of coming alongside, being close to her or him, and listening fully to their fear or their anxiety about their situation, and not necessarily trying to fix it or resolve it in some time, but simply listen generously to their concern, and express your deep wish to be of support to them, not only now, but in the future.
Great, Frank, thank you. You know, I'm reminded again of the words of Rachel Naomi Remen that I shared last week about helping, fixing, and serving are three different ways that we see life. When we help, we see life as weak, and when we fix, we see it as broken, but when we serve, we see life as whole. And I think that bringing hope into the midst of situations that look so hopeless, like futility. Actually, I have a poem. Can I read a poem that captures what I was going to say? I think it's better. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. It's called "In Impossible Darkness" by Kim Rosen. It says, "Do you remember what happens inside a cocoon? You liquefy. There in the thick black of your self-spun womb, void as the moon before waxing, you melt, as Christ did for 3 days in the tomb, conceiving in impossible darkness the sheer inevitability of wings." Whoa.
Beautiful.
Conceiving in impossible darkness, the sheer inevitability of wings. We don't know what is ahead in terms of our national, local, and global economies. And we don't know if there is a way that we are going to, quotes, go back to work that might be saner than how we worked in the past and how our economies were structured. For many people, this is a catastrophe because being out of a job means there's little to no food on the table. It also, for others, where it looks like a catastrophe, but it's forcing them to turn toward their gardens and also to cooperate with their neighbors. I mentioned last week, my good friends in Nepal are, whole neighborhoods are organizing to share rice and to share lentils so that there's equality in the distribution of food between families. We might find different ways ahead of us to actually share our resources that are less selfish. I don't know. But when someone is in a state of futility, of a deep pessimism, these words that I've just said will do no good. It's just to benefit us to, open up to different perspectives. But it is, as Frank suggests, is how do we bear witness, as we're doing here, to the truth of that person's suffering, or that family's suffering, or that country's suffering. How do we hold it, not turn away from it, and sit with not knowing, and not feel that we have to be prescriptive, but to actually be in resonance with the truth of futility, which could allow for the blessing of connection to actually be of service to those who are feeling futility and fear. So we call this series Bearing Witness for that reason. What is it to connect with the truth of suffering, but also to sit with not knowing, to be in possibility, and as Frank said, to rest in surprise. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that question. I really don't know, honestly. But having Frank and I have worked with dying people for many, many years. And, you know, prescriptions don't necessarily serve. But what will always serve is the human heart.
Shall we try another question?
Thank you, Roshi. Thank you, Frank. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, great. Well, my question, and I didn't think I was going to get through, so I put it in the Q&A. You can ignore that. How does trust and surrender relate to hope?
Well, perfect. It's exactly two words that we would associate with hope. And that is to say that the word trust, interestingly enough, is related to etymologically to the word dharma. And it also is related to the word tree. And our capacity to be right here in the midst and not turn away from what is present, that is trust. Again, going back to why Frank and I called this 3 seminars, Bearing Witness. Bearing witness, as we sit in our various charnel grounds, means that we have entrusted ourselves to this moment, and we trust this moment just as it is. Just as we sit with dying people, we trust that offering our care and presence is the gift. And trust and letting go, I think, are deeply, they're valences, they're aspects of each other. And it takes enormous trust in order to let go. Also, letting go requires trust. And it is exactly the spirit that you're talking about that infuses what I've called wise hope. And someone else on the question stream was asking about active hope. And this is a term that Joanna Macy crafted. And wise hope is, if you will, the platform that supports active hope. So thank you for the active hope and bringing that up, and also Joanna's work.
You know, Havel had that beautiful thing where he said, I think of hope as an innate quality of being, an open, active trust in life that refuses to quit. I like that a lot, actually. It really brings the two together, trust and hope. I think hope also has a quality of potency to it. You know, it speaks to possibility. You know, my granddaughter's 4 years old, Roshi, and I don't know what she's going to become.
Yeah.
I don't know. But I see in her a certain potency. And much of my time with her is about loving her and serving in a way that potency, you know, encouraging that. It's not that I have a particular desire for it to have a specific outcome, to turn out a particular way, but to really to support that potency, that capacity in us to become, actually, to fully become. That's another aspect of hope that I think is important to bring forward. Yeah, potency, and that gives us a kind of buoyancy that we need in this life. It's an essential human quality. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Franco.
I'm just going to be brief. Go ahead. Let's go to someone else.
Shall we have, Sylvia, do you want to select a Spanish question from the Q&A?
Sure. This is a question that is repeated. Inma, Jose Enrique, and Federico are asking this. I don't believe in hope. I've lost it. How to start believing in hope when your boat is shrinking, when you are dying?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, what hope does in a way is it helps us to go beyond beyond the rational, we could say. And that can be both beautiful and it has a shadow side, Um, I'm thinking about a woman that was in our hospice, and every day I would go by her room and she'd be eating a watermelon. And I just noticed she did this every day. And I went to her and I said, "Why, you really like watermelon?" And she said, "No, actually, I don't care for it very much at all. But my husband said he thought it would be good for my cancer." And so I found her husband and we sat down together and I said, your wife told me about this new cure that you found, watermelon. And he said, "It's fantastic. I read about it on the internet." And I said, "Oh, could you show it to me, And he showed me the site that he'd seen it at. And there it said, watermelon can be useful in hydrating a person. And hydration can be really important in people's care. And he just conflated all of this information. And so I didn't want to destroy his watermelon dreams of cure in that moment. But he saw it for himself. He saw for a moment that he was wishing for a particular outcome with his wife. He didn't want her to die. And so, I said to him in that moment, suppose your wife was to die today, what would you hope that she knows? And without missing a beat, he said, "Oh, I hope that she knows that I love her. I hope that she knows that my greatest joy in life has been to be married to her all these years." And that's my deepest hope, And I said, "And you have the capacity to share that with her now. You have the capacity to do that. It's right here, right now." And of course, he went back into the room and he said, "Let's put aside the watermelon and let's start kissing." I thought that was great. Yeah. So again, we have to look and see how hope can sometimes be the flip side of fear. And the expectation of a particular outcome can, cause us to start trying to manage the world, but we don't have much control over the weather on our wedding day or, when the pandemic is going to come to an end. We can't manage that necessarily. But I think that we can find within even these experiences that are so hard, surprise. Our dear friend, Brother David speaks about this a lot. He talks about hope as surprise. And that has a kind of imaginative daring to it, to really find this as a resourcefulness in our life is essential, I think. It can bring a lightness and a buoyancy to our life and enthusiasm and sensitivity to our life, I think. I think as human beings, we need hope, but it isn't about a particular object or outcome. So we have to be open to outcome, not necessarily attached to outcome. Anyway, those are a few thoughts. Roshi, anything you want to add?
Oh, I have lots to add, but I do want to say one thing. We're not talking about conventional hope here. I just want to clarify for everybody. This is wise hope. And it's wise hope is not seeing things unrealistically, but rather seeing things as they are. And also wise means we see the truth of impermanence.
Yes.
And we also see the truth of suffering as it is, both its existence and the inevitability of its transformation for better or for worse. So I saw in the chat stream, someone said, about the Barbara Kingsolver quote, "Well, looks like the potatoes are just for her." No. That was, it's not that at all. It's, we put potatoes in the cellar for the whole village. The whole village might think, "Oh, it's going to be fine," or, "Oh, the worst is going to happen. Everybody's going to die. There's no hope." But the person who has this kind of spirit of wise hope will see things realistically, knowing the truth of impermanence is there, that you can't expect an outcome. But in the event that there are survivors, potatoes in the cellar. I'm sharing them with all. And I think that one other thing I just want to mention, Frank, is that wise hope reflects the understanding that what we do matters. It makes a difference. Potatoes in the cellar. You know, everybody might die, or the winter might be not so bad. But what we do matters, even though we might not know when it will matter, how it matters, whom it will touch. We really can't know beforehand. And I think that's reflected in, Václav Havel's words as well. We can't know what will unfold from our actions now. Therefore, expectations are, they're not part of what one would call a wise hope. But our vows, our actions, how we live, what we care about, what we care for, all of this, it matters. And that is, for me, one of the key aspects of wise hope, and particularly of wise hope in the midst of this pandemic, where the hot spots in Italy, in Spain, in New York, are so devastating for people to experience. There's so much loss. There's so many moral dilemmas that people have to face, and yet the clinicians continue to show up. And the sense of the music on the balconies in Italy, still wise hope.
Right. I mean, it's an essential human quality, and we don't want to just toss hope away. But I think what Roshi's helping us to see is that we have to rework our understanding of it, rework the application of hope, actually. And again, I think it's about having a clear intention and simultaneously letting go. That's really essential in this way that Roshi's speaking about wise hope. This hope isn't dependent upon outcome. In fact, it's tied to uncertainty, because we never know exactly what's going to happen next. Okay, let's
yeah. Thanks, Frank.
Yeah.
Shall we go to a live question?
Sure.
So, Jane Tuohi, your hand is up. I will press unmute. Oh, wrong one. There we go.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, we can hear you.
If Roshi Joan could explain a little bit more what she meant when she used the term sappy positivity.
Okay. So sappy positivity, I associate with this kind of bypassing of the process of seeing the truth of suffering as it is. And also it's sometimes associated with optimism. Oh, everything's going to be okay. So that's what I'm speaking about. I'm not speaking to the kind of loving, gentle sense of connection, great kind-heartedness of that we can experience. But there's this kind of sappiness, sense of sort of glazing over, putting frosting on the cupcake, so much frosting that the cupcake of life gets lost. I don't know, is that helpful? And maybe you'd like to talk about the cupcake of life, Frank. And Jean, maybe you could say something where your question's coming from.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more from Jean. Anything else about that?
Just to say where my question is
Yeah.
coming from. I think that sometimes I myself and others go to gratitude because it's easier to experience gratitude than it is to experience my own pain or acknowledge that my pain is suffering.
Oh.
But I feel that it's sort of shutting off, and that's where I'm coming from.
Wow. So, yeah. Last week I talked, Jean, about the importance of having a varied diet. So, just taking in the truth of suffering as the only psychic food that you're ingesting maybe is not enough. And that it's important also to proactively engage in pro-social thoughts. Gratefulness, gratitude is one of them. Feeling like, for example, I remember when I fell in a bathroom in Toronto and shattered my leg. It was really bad. And once I kind of got my wits about me, my thought was, oh, what can I learn from this? And I felt I wasn't so grateful for my leg being in pieces, but I actually felt grateful for the lessons that I was being given. And also, the fact that you have a roof over your head, or that you have access to food, or that you might be in a relationship that you've totally taken for granted. And suddenly you realize, I'm so lucky not to be in an abusive relationship. And the thing that you were just completely oblivious to, the nature of the blessing of the relationship, you just took it for granted. Suddenly you begin to understand that's a gift, one of many. And even in the worlds that I've worked in the high Himalayas, where the material resources are so small, I know that that the gratitude that these amazing people in these remote communities express for just being listened to. Not being given something that's material, but just being listened to. And you realize, oh, when we listen to each other, we kind of take it for granted. But I could really feel that that presencing that is offered in those conditions is something that produces love, that engenders a sense of deep gratefulness. So don't drop gratitude out of your vocabulary, and yet also develop the courage and the means to actually be with the truth of whatever the heck is going on that is tough.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Roshi. That was beautiful. And, hope really opens the door to gratefulness, gratefulness is the key to a happy life. When we're not grateful, no matter how much we have, we're never happy. We're always looking for something else, trying to find more. So gratefulness allows us, hope opens the door to gratefulness, and then that gratefulness really allows us to settle. There's another piece to this that I want us to include, which is that for me, hope, at least in the way we're talking about it here, not the conventional idea of hope, it gives me access to joy. I always talk about love as the fuel for this journey through life, but joy is the spark that ignites that fuel. And joy for me is really connected again to surprise, When you watch children play, they don't play for a purpose. They play to discover, actually. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the qualities of joy, this kind of playfulness with life, this willingness to discover with life, And it isn't just, silliness. Any artist knows that they have an idea about how a particular piece that they're about to create might come about. But then they have to work with the material that's in front of them, the way the paint moves on the paper, or the way the glaze drips on the pot. So it's this relationship to unpredictability, which is really an essential part of what we're trying to describe here. The conventional hope is fixed. This is what I want. Why isn't it here? And this wise hope has more about unpredictability and moving with the flow of things in a way. and adapting continuously. Okay, let's go to another question.
I'm wondering if there are any, Fabio, if there are any Portuguese questions.
Yes, we have one. Mhm. So this is from Lana Canucci from Brazil. What could we hope for the post-pandemic world? How realistic is it to hope for a better world, a more welcoming, wise, and kind world?
Roshi?
No, I was going to say you,
All right.
Frank.
Well, I mean, I just think it's the I think it's the most realistic thing. I think it's the most realistic thing to really keep ourselves open to orienting toward the best in us as human beings. You know, it's not to deny that there isn't difficulty, not to deny that we won't have suffering and there isn't struggles, but it's the most realistic thing, you know, to lean toward the potency we have as human beings. You know, may this be a time of great learning for us. May it be a time when our appreciation of our interdependence with each other, which we're so seeing now, whether it's in supply chains or, you know, computer networks or family networks, that we see how tangled up we are in each other, how much we need one another. Yes, I think it's realistic and essential, actually, to keep imagining, to use our creative imaginations for a continued improvement and a better future. Yeah, one guided by love and wisdom, I hope.
You know, I think last week I mentioned that from one perspective, we're in a kind of global rite of passage. The separation phase is, you know, many of us are in isolation or we're sheltering with a few people together. And we're separated from the things that we're used to. We can't go to the funerals. We can't attend the marriages. Our kids or grandkids can't go back to school or to their graduation ceremonies. And we're really in a time. And that second phase of a rite of passage is called the threshold experience, and we are being thrashed apart. And the third phase is the return. So, you know, we're in the threshold experience, I think. It might get a lot worse. I don't know. Might get better. I don't know. I don't know how long we'll be in this betwixt and between place. Just at Upaya, we were going to be closed till the end of May. Now it's the end of November. Maybe it's the end of next year. I don't know. But in this experience that we're sharing as a global community, it is a time when the structures that we have depended on are deeply challenged, and many of which are falling apart, like our economies. And so how we are receptive to this process and work this process that we're in, which takes a lot of tenaciousness as well as letting go. It takes a lot of trust and also opening to radical uncertainty. And if we're saying, okay, what am I learning here? What are the lessons that are important for me and for the global community and really for all species? And how can I keep these lessons in the foreground of my life as we move out of this phase of the threshold into the phase of integration or return? And how can I work, dedicate myself to the unfolding of systems that are sane and just for my generation, that is all of us, whether we're just born or about to die, and the generations to come. So, you know, I look at it, I mean, the two-leggeds have done one heck of a job in terms of the whole planet. And this virus, which seems to be interspecies in the sense it seems to have jumped from bats to humans. And why are, you know, bats contacting humans in this way, connecting with humans in this way? We don't know. But what we do know is that we have, in a certain way, a kind of imperative of hope, of wise hope, to bring whatever we're learning into the phase of integration once this virus is no longer a global threat, an individual threat. And we know from complex adaptive systems that break down and that learn from the breakdown process can reorder themselves at a higher, much more functional level. And that's what, you know, wise hope is for me. That perspective we know from the point of view of initiation in tribal and Oldai cultures. We know that many people who go through catastrophe, who experience trauma, actually go through an experience of positive disintegration and integrate at a higher, more functional level. And that functional level is called thriving. How can we create the inner courage, foster the inner courage and nourish the conditions that will allow us, not just as individuals, but as a global interspecies community, to thrive in the future? And that's what I'm really, quotes, hoping to see. If it doesn't work out, so be it. I will continue to face the truth of suffering, should I still be alive, and work with those conditions. We can do this.
Noah?
Yeah. What do you think, Frank? Live, written, Spanish, Portuguese. So many people would like to speak.
Let's try a live one just for change.
Live.
Okay, how about Ignacio Eisenstein? Ignacio Eisenstein. So go ahead and unmute yourself if you can. I've pressed unmute on my end.
¿Sí me escuchan?
Loud and clear.
Bueno. Bueno, sobre todo mucho gusto, muchas gracias por todo lo que están compartiendo. Pero mi pregunta es, ante este tipo, se me está escuchando, ¿no?
Yes.
Sí, ante este tipo de circunstancias.
So my question is, facing this kind of circumstances,
lamentablemente no es por primera vez en la humanidad,
and this is not the first time in
la diferencia es que esta vez más el ser humano está mucho más preparado que otras veces.
But the thing is that we are much more prepared now. So I don't understand why do we have this fear. This is not the first time that human beings are facing this kind of pandemic situation. So why do we have so much fear? I don't understand this fear. I think that the worst pandemic is human being. The worst pandemic is human beings. So how can we fight fear? Not the pandemic, but the fear that we have. Because when we have fear as human beings, I mean, we lost our battles. We lose our battles if we have fear. So I cannot imagine how was it in the Second World War. It was much worse probably. But I don't think that they were worried all the time. So
¿qué iba a pasar mañana? Sino que iba a pasar en ese momento,
they
iba a
were
poder
not
comer o
thinking
no,
about the future.
pero no sabían lo que iba a pasar
I mean,
dentro
they
de un
didn't
año,
know. It
dentro
was
de
a
dos,
time of uncertainty
murieron
also.
millones de seres humanos.
Millions of people were dying in the Second World War.
En la India y en
and
África,
in India, millions of people die of hunger. And in Africa, millions of people die every day. Why don't we take care of that? Why are just thinking about pandemics? So 20,000 people in coronavirus, and how many people die from hunger? So the problem is not COVID.
Por un lado, el miedo que se está sembrando,
so what do we do with this kind of fear?
Y por otro lado, es el armar una burbuja en base a esta pandemia. O sea, tapando con esto todos los demás problemas que hay y que hace que muchos más seres humanos mueran todos los días.
Millions of people are dying, so why do we have this fear?
Thank you. great question. Frank.
Oh, you know, we human beings, we have a wish to survive. And we can't underestimate the power of that drive. Roshi and I have been sat on the bedsides of so many thousands of people, and even people with, when their death was clearly imminent, want to survive. We want to continue. And partly we're afraid because we imagine that all that we are is this little personality, this small sense of self, And so I don't think that fear goes away, actually. I think what happens is we develop an awareness that allows us to hold that fear, to really hold that fear in some loving way. And then it doesn't take up all the space in the room. I think it's natural for people to be afraid. But it isn't all that we are. That's the thing that about our awareness can help us to see, is that when we're afraid, we can know we're afraid. We can feel the body afraid. We can see what happens in the mind. We can see how the heart contracts. And that aspect of us that knows that we're afraid is not afraid. And we can come to function from that as opposed to our fear alone. And so I think that's the kind of encouragement we want to offer today. Not that there shouldn't be fear, or that it's not natural to be afraid, but that there is a way to work with that fear. That's what comes to my heart and mind as I speak here. Roshi, you want to add anything?
Actually, you said everything I wanted to say, but maybe, since I always have something extra. Fear is about a threat to our survival. And in a way, it's realistic and it's unrealistic. And we're all going to die. There's just no question about it. And on the other side is, when can fear be a teacher? So when I'm afraid, and there have been times where I definitely am afraid. Usually I feel afraid when I see threat to others. And when I have that feeling of fear, I know that I'm standing on the edge of something really important that I need to pay attention to. I don't say, don't be afraid. I say, again, my old line to myself, what am I learning here? What is this edge that I'm standing on? What is it teaching me? And one of the things that I have learned from fear is about priorities. Fear has taught me what I care about. And it's not just about my own survival. It's about the well-being of species of every kind that I can imagine. It's about what the children might face in the future. It's, something inside of me that it has conventional hope operating, and if things don't turn out well, there's going to be so much suffering, and I'm afraid of that. And I look, what is that teaching me? What is that teaching me? And how can I bring wise hope into that moment? Can I see it as something that actually engenders within me a sense of care? And like Joanna Macy talks about, that activates active hope, not reactive hope. So I look at fear as an ally, not an enemy. And as Frank said, it's just part of what it is to be human. And also, one does not want to be a toy of fear. Yeah. I hope that was helpful.
Noah?
Shall we go to another live question?
As you wish, Noah. You're making wise choices all along the way here.
Or let's see. Yeah, that was in Spanish. So Esther Ferrer, if you would unmute yourself. Okay, she's another Spanish. Go ahead, we can hear you.
Hi, good evening.
Muchas gracias por estas
Thanks so much for these webinars.
Es un regalo para mí.
This is like a gift for me to be able to participate, to
me emociono,
use my voice.
Pues vengo de dos experiencias de cáncer hace 5 años, tengo 40 años y en esta situación me ha dado la oportunidad de vivir la incertidumbre de una manera distinta. Entonces, la pregunta que yo le quiero hacer a Rosy es ¿cómo separar esa esperanza que a veces se relaciona con el miedo en pensar tengo miedo a que pase algo en el futuro, que no sea lo que yo quiero?
How can I have this fear and at the same time
no sé si se entiende la pregunta.
I don't know if this is clear, if my question is clear. How can I have
Porque esperas algo del futuro, la esperanza relacionarla con el miedo, porque esperas algo del futuro positivo, algo bueno.
How can I hope something positive and at the same time to be fearful, something like that?
Frank? I see something churning, and then I'll reflect.
I mean, one of the things that we maybe need to pull apart here is that there's hope, the wise hope that Roshi was speaking about, and then there's hopes, which is not the plural of wise hope. It's objects, things we want, in the future. And that's, again, that brings us back to that conventional kind of hope, like, I don't want any bad things to happen, or I want to get this for Christmas. It's a child's wish, really. And what we're orienting ourselves to here is a kind of, as Roshi said, wise hope or mature hope, the mature hope of an adult. One of the things that I think about hope is that I think about it as helping me to recognize the capacities I have to meet whatever arises. I don't so much hope for the conditions to be right or the way I want them. I have a kind of feeling that I have the possibility as a human to respond fully and completely with all of my heart, with all of my knowledge, the learning that Roshi's been helping us to understand about, and that this will serve me now and in the future. That's the first thing that comes to my heart and mind, is my hope really resides in my own resourcefulness, the resourcefulness of my being, my deep being, not just my personality. Yeah. So I'll start there, Roshi. Maybe you want to add some more.
Actually, I feel like you pointed out something so important, Frank, and that is a sense of being resourced.
Yeah.
That when we experience internal poverty, this heart mind of not enough, then fear is there because our survival is threatened. And again, it is being, from my point of view, because there have been times when I have felt not resourced at all. And I've had to stop and rest and remember and look deeply. So I think part of wise hope is this call to actually create the conditions where, even though we might be in the worst imaginable situation, to find ways to resource ourselves. And it doesn't mean the accumulation of 1,000 Buddha statues. It really has to do with the sense of deep internal richness. And again, Frank, you said it, it's not to reject fear. Fear lets us know that we're on the edge and it's time to wake up. And it also helps us to get some sense of the perspective of our priorities. But as I said, we don't want to be a toy of fear. And so we also don't want to be in the dream of conventional hope, where we have this expectation of a particular outcome. Wise hope is that we are in a realistic relationship with reality as it is right now. We're with not knowing. We have ourselves resourced enough to bear witness to things exactly as they are. We're open to surprise. And also we know that what we do will matter in some way, if only to us. How we care. Maybe that which we care for won't ever know that we care, but still it's living a life that is really grounded in deep values that are humane, that are compassion-based, and that are wise.
Beautiful. You know, these days when people ask me about my practice, I often describe it, I say I'm just doing my best to practice learning how to be intimate. To really learn how to be intimate with everything in my experience, my fear, my joy, my suffering. To learn how to come so close to it that there's nothing between me and it anymore. And in that way, I can know it in a way from the inside out, you know. I can see what it, you know, as you've been suggesting, what it has to teach me, what I can learn from this experience. So pause, relax, open, really allow the experience to come forward, the fear or whatever experience is emerging, and then become intimate. Know it through direct experience, through your immediate contact with it. Yeah.
So okay. Frank, I just, I'm remembering, there's a poem that's short. Can I share it?
Yeah, please.
This is a piece of a poem by the Kentucky poet Wendell Berry. Yeah. And near his house is a sycamore tree. And he wrote, this is about the sycamore tree. Fences have been tied to it, nails driven into it, hacks and whittles cut in it. The lightning has burned it. There is no year it has flourished in that has not harmed it. Mm-hmm. It has risen to a strange perfection in the warp and bending of its long growth. Mm-hmm. It has gathered all accidents into its purpose. Mm-hmm. It has become the intention and radiance of its dark fate. So I share that poem in part because I'm seeing you, Frank, on my screen. And I knew you before your heart attacks. Mm. I knew you before your stroke, or strokes, not just one. Mm. And I would say you're like that sycamore tree. And it's not just the physical afflictions that you've experienced, but also there have been other incredible losses in your life, and the multiple losses of sitting with dying people, the hacks and whittles. And you have become, as our friendship has grown deeply over the years, a person who has more depth. It has become the intention and radiance of its dark fate. You know, you have brought more depth forward in your life because of the suffering you've been through. And in a weird kind of way, I feel you're thriving more as a result of the afflictions you yourself have experienced. So I say this to you, as your old friend. It's not that you weren't a good guy before, but it's not as if our past, if we're talking about our global culture, is all bad. But it's rather that the difficulties that we're going through might well lead to a deeper heart, more care and concern. And as I said, I see it in the life that you are offering now, Frank. And I also have this wise hope that we will learn, as you have learned, to be more intimate, more transparent, and also to live by vow to not harm, so that all beings can flourish, so that we can live in a world that is characterized by thriving, not by desolation and division.
Beautiful. You know, Roshi, one of the things that we haven't spoken of hope yet, and maybe we should mention it, is that hope can be a kind, and I'm not talking here about conventional hope, I'm talking about the wise hope we've been speaking of, it can be a kind of salve to us. It helps us to see, you know, in a new way, a transformed way, actually. You know, I was walking through this big hospital in the Midwest one time, going to give grand rounds to a group of 1,000 doctors. And as I was walking through this big impersonal steel and glass building with the head of nursing, she was talking to me, and suddenly Brahms' Lullaby began to play over the loudspeaker system. And it just stopped me in my tracks. And I thought, and I asked her, I said, "What's that?" She said, "Oh, a baby's been born." I said, "What?" She said, "Yeah, a baby's been born. Anytime a baby's born in this hospital, we play Brahms' Lullaby." I said, "You mean just here in the lobby?" She said, "No, into all the rooms." I said, "The patient's rooms?" "Yes, the patient's rooms. It plays into the operating theaters. It plays into even into the security offices." And I just thought it was a beautiful thing. And I looked around for a moment. Everybody had stopped. Everybody had stopped their busyness and their productivity and their worry and their anxiety. And for a moment, hope filled the whole space. It wasn't just an optimism. It was hope. And it was a kind of salve that we can be surprised by the fact that the law of impermanence isn't just the law of loss. It's the law of change and becoming. And we have choice in what we become. We have choice in what we become. And as we look to the future, I want us to exercise that choice. That's my hope, that we use our resourcefulness and exercise the very best in us. Often crisis like this brings that forward. It brings everything forward. It brings the whole human condition forward, but it also helps us access the best in us. And may that guide our actions as we go forward.
Yay, Frank.
Yay.
May it be so.
May it be so. May we make it so. May we do what we can to contribute to that.
So,
without
Frank,
attachment to outcome. Sorry?
No attachment to outcome, but yeah. So, Frank, I'm aware that we're approaching the 12:30 time of conclusion. And this is the conclusion of these 3 seminars that I just thank you so much, and also our team so much, and those of you who are gathered here. And I also want to just touch back into what Frank said at the beginning, that your donations to UPI and Metta right now will make a huge difference. So feel free and feel fine if that's not something that you can do. And I also want to mention that because of Silvia and Gustavo and Fabio and Jean and their communities, we're able to actually gather together for the Varela International Symposium, which is happening toward the end of May, and also the Awakened Action with women leaders in relation to the experience of climate change. So I'm so grateful. And also I think that we'll also be in Portuguese and Spanish translation for Love and Death at the end of August. Boy, was that timely, huh? We are in the middle of it. So I just encourage you all to let us continue the thread of this Maha community that we're in, it's a time for us to connect and explore and return again and again. All of this is freely given. Your help is deeply appreciated. And as it is, do what is appropriate and congruent for you. And Frank, I think you have a few concluding words, and then we can dedicate the merit.
Yeah. Oh, just I want to echo Roshi's gratitude to Nuracara and the amazing team in Madrid, and our friends in Brazil, Fabio and our friends in Brazil, for bringing this program out to the world, and to the people behind the scenes at Upaya, the people who register these 3,000 people for this program. Everybody is doing their very best, working their very hardest with their whole hearts. And I'm here with my virtual begging bowl to say to you, please, do your very best to support Upaya and the Metta Institute. Our organizations have been having to adapt in ways we couldn't have imagined before. And, we're doing the best we can. And so please express your gratitude, your generosity as you are able in these tough times. We will be forever thankful for your support. There's a poem I like. It's called Everything is Waiting for You. Maybe it's a good one for us to close on. It says, your great mistake is to act the drama as if you were alone, as if you were a progressive and cunning crime with no witnesses to your tiny hidden transgressions, to feel abandoned, to deny the intimacy of your surroundings. Surely even you, at times, have felt the grand array, the swelling presence, and the chorus crowding out your solo voice. You must note the way the soap dish enables you, or the window latch grants you freedom. Alertness is the hidden discipline of familiarity. The stairs are your mentor of things to come. The doors have always been there to frighten you and invite you. And the tiny speakers in your phone, your dream ladder to divinity. Set down the weight of your aloneness and ease into the conversation. The kettle is singing, even as it pours you a drink. The cooking pots have left their arrogant aloofness and seen the good in you at last. All the birds and creatures of the world are unutterably themselves. Everything is waiting for you. Everything is waiting for you.
Frank. Wow.
Oh, Roshi.
Oh, I love you.
I love you too. And yeah.
So I want to end with some Leonard Cohen.
Oh, good.
Okay. It's just a line from one of his songs. It goes, I greet you from the other side of sorrow and despair, with love so vast and shattered, it will reach you everywhere. I greet you from the other side of sorrow and despair, with a love so vast and shattered, it will reach you everywhere. Mm. So may whatever you have benefited from in the time that we have met together, and whatever you have learned, may you dedicate it to the welfare of others. And again, Noah, Gustavo, Silvia, Jean, Fabio, Jose Maria Jose, and all those wonderful people in the background. Thank you so much. And Vanda, who supports you, Frank.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. And I look forward to us coming together online again in the near future. May you be safe. may you be well. May all beings be safe, be strong, and be well. Thank you.